guys, so this is what we're going to create. We're going to start with a magazine cover, and we're going to go with a Vogue cover, but you can do any type of magazine cover you like. So if I go over to Bing or Google Images and I type in magazine cover, and I have a look at the different images that will come up here. This will give you a really good idea of the different types of magazines there are. So we've got InStyle, 17, Slam, People, Entertainment, Forbes, Mary Claire, Time Magazine, People Magazine, Men's Health, different types of magazines. You've got magazines for films, you've got magazines for celebrities, you've got magazines for fashion, sports, and if you want to go, let's just have a look at Sport Magazine. You'll see all the different types of sport magazines. If you're looking for fashion, you can go Fashion Magazine. Once you pinpoint the type of magazine you're after, maybe you looked at some fashion magazines and then wanted to see all the cosmopolitan magazines, or maybe you were looking at sport magazines and then decided, okay, I really want to see the Sports Illustrated or ESPN magazine covers. Then you can focus in on the actual magazine cover for you and then try and mimic that style of magazine cover. Now today what we've chosen is to do a Vogue magazine cover. So I'm going to look up Vogue and I'm going to try and mimic the various components that make up a Vogue magazine cover. And I'm going to try and steal a lot of different ideas from all these different types of Vogue magazine covers. Now, we're using Ariana Grande as our cover star, and that image I am going to give you guys, it's in the description, video description. If you want to get to it, you can simply go to this URL, bit.ly/year7 magazine. And if you go to this URL, it will take you directly to the folder with Ariana Grande, the QR code we're going to use, and also the font we're going to use, the Vogue font. Now, you don't need any of these. You can get your own image, your own cover star, which I highly recommend. But if you wanted to follow the tutorial exactly how it is, these will be needed. So how about we get started? And this is what we're going to create. So we'll keep this here just for inspiration. What we're going to do, although we're going to be doing this in InDesign, where our actual magazine, we're going to be creating a lot of the pages in Photoshop. So let's get started. In Photoshop, we're going to go File, New, and these are the settings that I want you to put in. So the name is going to be magazine cover. Now, in terms of the document type, we're actually going to do a custom size. So you can go custom there. And when it says width, height, etc., you're going to change this and make sure it's in pixels. Very, very important that you have it in pixels and not something else. Don't have it in pickers. Don't have it in points or centimeters. Make sure it's in pixels. That's very, very important to get your sizing correct. Now the width of our magazine is going to be 600 and the height is going to be 800, and we're happy with the rest. So you can leave the resolution at 300. Don't go over 300, that's probably too high. You can go as low as probably 150 and it'll still look good, but we can keep it at 300. Pixels per inch, it should be on. Color mode is RGB, and 8 bits is our color range. Okay, the rest should be easy as, so we'll just go through it again. The name I've given it is magazine cover. It's a custom document and the custom settings are 600 pixels, 800 pixels height, resolution 300 pixels per inch, RGB color mode 8 bits, and the background is white. I'm going to hit OK on that. And what you should get is a nice white box. Now you can zoom in. Remember, on a Mac, Command plus and Command minus will zoom in and out, and on a PC it's Control plus and Control minus on your keyboard. Okay. Now the first thing you want to do, and as you have a look at this magazine cover, is get your cover star. Now to do that, I've already got those images for you that you can download from that bit.ly URL. However, if you wanted to source your own cover star, this is what I would do. I would go to Bing and I would look for the person you want. So for example, I'm looking for a celebrity, someone who's going to be on my cover star, or maybe if I'm doing a sporting magazine, it could be an athlete that I'm looking for. If you're making a technology magazine, like a gaming magazine, then maybe it's not a person, maybe it's a game or a game character or the new PlayStation 5. Or maybe you want to put yourself or one of your friends on the cover. So it's completely up to you. Our magazine is going to be a fashion magazine, so I want a celebrity to be on there. Now, for this particular magazine, I'm going to pick Ariana Grande, and I've already got that image. So once you know what star you want, you can actually type that star in. And the next thing I did was actually put photo shoot at the end of my search, and you'll see all the different photo shoot images they've been in. And there's a couple of things you want to do after that. Over here on the right side, you'll see filter. So make sure you got filter selected and your filter should pop up. For image size, you wanted a large, at least a large or extra large file. And then under type, you want to select transparent. And what that will do is that'll make sure that the image background isn't there, and that'll be easier for you to actually place into your document. So here's some of them, and I can pick any of these, but the ones you don't want are the ones that are cut off. So for example, this picture here, you can see her arm and her hair is cut off, and that's going to be hard to put that in the magazine. You want to try and find one where it's got most of the body. If the legs are cut off, that's fine. So this one here is quite a nice photo. So if I wanted this photo, I could right click and download the image. What we might actually do is make it a little bit larger. I'll just click on it. Now I'll right click it. I can copy the image or I can download it. So I'm just going to copy the image, and then in my Photoshop hit Command V to paste in there, or Control V, and then I can move her around. Okay, so if you wanted to, that's how you would get your cover star image. Now I've already got those images for you. So if you go to the bit.ly URL, Year 7 magazine, and it's in the video description, you should have access to this cover star image of Ariana Grande. So we're going to use that image. So here it is there, and I'm just going to drag that in. Now to place an image into your Photoshop, you can just drag it in, or you can go up to File and then Place, and that will also place your image into the Photoshop canvas. Now, once she's in there, what you want to do is just resize it a little bit, and once you're happy with the sizing, you can hit Enter on your keyboard and that'll save it. So that's the first step. With your magazine covers, you need a cover star. So whether it's a celebrity or it's a piece of technology, get something to go on your magazine cover. The second thing that we need to do is we need the actual magazine name to go there. Now, what we're going to do is just use some text. So I'm going to click on the little T button over here so I can write some text. I'm going to click and drag a text box. Now, this magazine's called Vogue, so I'm going to write Vogue. And you can't actually see it because it's actually a white text, so I'll just highlight my text. I'll change it to black, and I'll also increase the size. So up here I've got the size, and all I do is click on the T and actually drag it to the right to make it bigger. If I drag to the left, click and drag to the left, it'll go smaller. If I click and drag to the right, it'll go larger. And then I can click on the moving tool to move it anywhere I want. Now, the closest text type that I found that actually matches Vogue is one that's called source sans variable. So if you wanted to, you could just go in here, type in source sans variable. And that's probably one of the default text types that closely matches Vogue. Now, if you want the exact font that is used in Vogue magazine, so if I go and I have a look at Vogue magazine, you'll see they have a unique font. Now, if you want this exact font, you're going to have to go to a website and download that font. Now, in the Google Drive, I've already downloaded that font for you, and you can right click and you can download this font and actually just double click on it and it will install. So once it actually downloads, I'll show you what to do. Once it installs on the computer, I can actually just go to it. There it is there, Vogue font. I can double click on that. It will then ask me, do I want to install the font? And I just hit install font. And that will then install the font for me to use. So if I go back to my text and I double click on my text, over here on the top right, when I go to search for a font, if I type in Vogue now, I've actually got the exact Vogue font that the actual magazine uses. And there it is. Really, really cool. Now, if you wanted to get your font for your magazine, let's pretend that you're using a different magazine. I'll show you how I found the Vogue font. So I went to Google, and the website I went to is called The Font. It's DAFONT. And on this website, you can search for different types of fonts, and people will then give you those fonts, and you can actually install these. Get heaps of different fonts on this website. Now, if I wanted to find a particular font for a magazine, let's pretend that we were doing a different magazine. Or let's just stick with Vogue. What I did was I searched for Vogue, and there it is there. And I can click on it and click download, and that will download the same file that was in the Google Drive, and it will allow me to actually have that font on Photoshop and across all my Adobe applications, even Microsoft Word, and I can just install it like that. So that's how you install fonts. Okay, so now back to my text. What I'm going to do is just make it a little bit bigger. And that's probably big enough. And I'm just going to pop it up here. Now you can see it actually goes over Ariana Grande's head. But what we're going to do, down over here where we've got our layers, and cool thing about having everything on separate layers is we can manipulate which one's on top. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move the text underneath the cover star image. So I'm just going to click on it and I'm going to drag it underneath and let go. And then what you'll see is our text is actually gone behind Ariana Grande. And you'll see magazines do that quite a bit. So if I go and have a look at different types of Vogue magazines, you'll see sometimes they have the text behind the cover star, and sometimes they'll have it in front of the cover star. And it's completely up to you how you want yours to function. Okay, so we've got our text in there, and I'm just going to pull it down a little bit. The next thing you want to do is actually start putting some text in there and make it look a little bit more lively. Now the text that goes around normally describes what's going to be inside your magazine. So if we have a look, and actually there is a Ariana Grande cover for Vogue, and there it is there. So let's open that up and we can have a look at this magazine cover. So on this particular magazine cover, you'll see there's a few different texts. So you've got real chick, real life, different things, different font types, different colors, subtle colors used. And you'll also notice here on the just below, it always has the month as well underneath the Vogue. So we will pop that in as well. So we're going to build up this magazine to look a little bit more. Okay, so let's grab another text tool and we're going to draw another text box. Now we're currently in April, but you guys will probably be looking at this more like in May. So I'm going to write MAY. Now it's probably too big to see it in there. So what I'll do is just resize my font and then I can write it in there. And I can highlight my text, resize it if I need. What I'm going to do is resize this font and I'm going to move it underneath Vogue, make it a little bit smaller, and I'll use the arrow keys on my keyboard to move it underneath the E there. Perfect. So let's see what else we can do. So if you have a look at my earlier example, I had a little bit of a different background. So it wasn't completely white. I made it almost like a gradient effect. So let's try that next. So over here we've got the background. And what we're going to do, we'll just unlock it. So I'm just going to click on that lock. I can double click where it's got the name and I can just rename it to background. And with this selected, I'm going to actually go and right click it and we're going to go up to blending options right at the top. Okay, so to do that, just right click and then go up to blending options. Now with blending options selected, what you'll find is all these different things you can do to the background layer. Now if you just want a plain color, you can click on color overlay. And with color overlay, making sure your blend mode is on normal, you can click in here and you can select any color you want, and that will change the color of your magazine cover. Just like so. But what we want actually a gradient effect. So we're going to go over here and we're going to select gradient overlay. Now it may already put something in for you, but what I'm going to show you is the exact settings that I used. So the blend mode, we want the blend mode to be normal for the gradient overlay. Opacity 100%. Now before we go into the gradient, the gradient style we want is radial. Okay, you can try the different ones if you want different effects. So diamond will give you a different type of effect. So you can try all of these different effects. What we want is radial. Now the particular angle I'm using here is 135 and the scale is 150%, but you can change those and you'll get a different effect. Okay, and the scale as well, depending on the scale you want. Now, the gradient, this is the fun part here. So if I click into gradient, it will open up this box. And with this box, what happens is, typically you have multiple boxes that set up one color into another. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on one of the boxes, and then we're going to click on color down here to select the color we want. So I'm just going to pretend I want red. So I'll click on red. And then on the other boxes, this is where your gradient is. And your other boxes, you can slide them along if you want, or you can just click on them and then click color to change the color. So maybe I wanted to go to an orange. And then this one, click on there. Maybe I want this to go to a bit of a yellow. And this one here, we can make this one a bit of a lighter yellow. And this one here, we can make this go very, very light yellow. And then hit OK. So there we've got a nice gradient. If you don't like too many of those boxes, you can delete them. So you can delete each box, and maybe you only want two gradients, two colors that blend from one to the other, and you can hit OK on that. If you're not happy with the gradient, you can change it. So what we'll do, we'll click on the first box, we'll click on color. I'm going to go from a gray, and I know that might be a little bit boring, but I'm going to keep it looking a little bit more professional. But you can do anything you like. So if I wanted to add another box, I can click in there and it will just create another box for me. And we'll hit OK. Okay, so if you're happy with that, hit OK on the gradient. So that's the next thing we wanted to do. Now, a couple of other things we're going to do is we're going to add some text around there. Now, I got these little articles or snippets of text straight from some of the other Vogue magazine examples. So this part here that says the real chick, real life, I stole that from the real one and I put that in myself. So I'm going to show you guys how I did that. So I'm going to grab the text box and I'm going to create myself a large enough text box and I'm going to write that in there. So real chick, real life, and I'm going to highlight my text and I'm just going to make it a bit bigger, not too big, that's probably big enough. And I'm just going to move it over here. Now, my text is underneath the cover star. What we want to do is put it above the cover star, and that way it stays on top. The other thing we want to do, you also want to change your font type. You don't want everything to be the Vogue font. So make sure you change your font type. Check out all the different types of fonts. One font that I like is the source serif variable. So if I click in here, I can go to source variable white, and that's a really cool. And there it is. Now, a couple other things I can do with my text, and I'll just show you over here. Let's just move Ariana again to the right. With my text highlighted, so selecting it all, I can go up to the top here and I can click on this button to open up the properties of my characters. And if I zoom in, I'll show you what they do. Some really cool things you can do here. So the first thing you can do is obviously change the font type. Second thing you can do is change the font size. So if you wanted to change the font size, you can do that here. This one is really cool. It will either increase or decrease the size between the lines. So over here, if I increase this, you'll see the size or the gap between the text increases or decreases. So you can get really clever with that there. So that's pretty cool. Another cool thing you can do is and I might have to just drop this onto 2 lines so you guys can see the difference, is the gap between each character there. So you can make each character get really, really close to each other or space them further away from each other. So that's pretty cool as well. I'll just bring that back to normal. and just move this. There we go. A couple other cool things. You can stretch your text. So if I want them to be a lot longer, I can do that there. I'll bring that back. You can make them wider. And obviously things like capitalization. So if you want all your characters to be capitals, or if you want them to be underlined and things like that, you can play around with those settings here as well. Here is you can either left justify it, which is really cool when you have font that's lined up against an edge. And this font, I was going to line it up on the right side. So if I move my font and I right justify it, it actually will look pretty cool because it will line up with the edge. Now you may not like that. You may want to actually keep it centered or left justified. It's completely up to you. But that's another tool you can use, and that's on the top bar there. So let's finish this off. So basically what we're doing is just putting in some more text. So I'm going to just pop that there. Let's see, what else did we have in the original one? Okay, we had a little quote here and Ariana Grande's name. So we'll just put her name here. And pop that down a little bit and grab it and try and keep everything on a separate text layer. Now I forgot what quote she said, but let's just say I love pink. It's my favorite color. Let's pretend that's what she said. And I'm going to resize this, make it smaller. And let's drop it onto 2 lines. And let's move that. Now you can also change the color of each text, remember that, okay? So if I wanted to, I could go in here and completely change the look of that, okay? So if you wanted to, you could do that, but I won't. You can also, if you don't like the gap that's in between this, remember I can highlight my text, open up the properties panel and decrease that gap and pull that up a little bit. Okay, but I did like the gap, so I might keep it. I'll just drop it down a little bit. Cool. I'm also going to create, let me just have a look at this one. We're going to create her name and then taking the lead. Okay, so another name. So we're just going to write her name down here, Ariana Grande. Make it a bit smaller. And this time I think we had the text white, so I'm just going to select white there. A couple other things we had, and it was bigger text, and it wrote taking the lead. So I'm going to write that in, taking the lead, and I'm hitting enter each time so that each character goes on a separate. I might have to make that a little bit bigger. There we go. Taking the lead. I think Ariana Grande is maybe a bit too big. Let's make that a bit smaller. Let's line her up to the left side. Also, let's line this text up to the left side. So we'll left justify it and put it about there. Actually, I think the original one was on 2 lines. Let's have a look at that. Yeah, it was. Okay, so we'll go back to this one. We'll just pull this back up and we'll make it a bit bigger. And I might actually make it bold so it stands out a little bit. Cool. Now, the other thing that we did was we used a shape, and shapes are really cool for making things pop within a magazine. So if you have a look at my original one, I've got these two shapes here, and they're just lines, but they make the magazine look a whole lot better. So what we're going to go over here to where our shapes are, and we're going to right click here, and we're going to select the rectangle tool, and we're just going to draw a rectangle, and we're going to make it like a line, like so. And now we need two of these. So what we're going to do over here, we're going to right click, and we're going to duplicate this, and that way we have two of them, and we're going to get the moving tool, and we're going to move one of them up. Now this is all about using your layers correctly. So with my layers, we've got two rectangles. One of them we're going to drop. We're actually going to move it underneath the picture of Ariana Grande, so that we have an effect like that. So that is behind Ariana Grande, and we kind of line it up with her name, and it gives it a bit of a striking effect there. So everything kind of should be on top of the cover star. Nothing else should be below the cover star except for the background image and that one rectangle that we just created. Now there's only a couple other things we need to do. What we're going to do is we're going to bring in a QR code, which I love, and I think you guys are going to love that as well. Let's just move this a little bit to the left. Okay, we're going to put a QR code on the right side, and we're also going to just put something on top. So we'll do the first top part first. Going to create another rectangle, and I'm going to draw a rectangle at the top here. And this time the rectangle, I want it to be black. So I'm going to click here and select black. You can also do that up here where it says fill. You can click on fill and select black, or use the color picker and select black. You can, if this is afterwards and you want to change the color, you can go to your shape and you can double click inside the shape here, and that will allow you to change the color. Okay, so if you wanted to change the color, you could make it red like that. I'm going to keep it black, so I'll go back to black. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to get the text tool, and I'm just going to draw a nice thin long text box, and I'm going to write Ariana Grande in there. Now my text is actually, can't see it because it's too big, so we need to make it smaller, and then we'll actually resize that text box. Now what I'm going to do is actually copy that, and I'm just going to paste it, paste it, paste it, paste it, and I'm going to move that, and I'm going to move it right there to give that top part of the magazine a little bit of an effect. Now again, if you wanted to change the color of that rectangle, all you got to do is double click in the image part there, and you can change it. So we can change that anytime we want. Okay, the last thing we're going to do is bring in the QR code. I've already created a QR code, and it's in the bit.ly URL, and there it is there. So I'm going to bring that in, and you can just drag it into Photoshop. So I'm just going to drag it in, and I'll resize it, and I'm going to put it down below. Now the QR code is going to act almost like a barcode for us. And if you wanted to create your own QR code and you didn't want to use the one I created, you can just Google QR code, but the best website that I find is called QR Stuff. QR stuff. This is a really cool website. There's heaps of websites like this, but basically what I do is I select what I want to create. So what do you want your QR code to do? Well, I wanted to show some text. So I'm going to find plain text. And once I select the data type, I enter the text I want. Now in this case, the QR code, I just wanted to say a price, so $9.99, and then I can download the QR code, and it downloads it as a picture. Now I'm going to demonstrate it right now on my phone how this works. So here we go, I got my phone. I actually just using the camera app, and I just point the camera at the QR code and it automatically tells me the text that I wrote in there. Okay, so that's this text here that I wrote in here. That shows up. So you can use this on an Android phone or a iPhone. You just use the camera app and it will detect the QR code and tell you what someone has written. So that's the QR code that we put down there, and that's going to be a bit of a barcode for us. So now we're finished. We want to actually save this. So we're going to go File, Save As, and we're going to create a folder. So I've created a folder called Year 7 Magazine, and we're going to make sure the format is a Photoshop format and hit save on that. So that is part 1 of creating your magazine. It's all about creating your front cover. Now remember, you don't have to do Ariana Grande, you don't even have to do Vogue. You can come up with your own magazine. It can be any type of magazine you want. It's up to you. And this is part 1 of creating your magazine. Now, once you have actually finished creating your magazine, then you want to go into InDesign, and that is what the second video is going to be showing you guys.